We're following all of the action right here on Capitol Hill at this very hour as the Senate is now trying to avert a government shutdown. Another big looming question tonight, it's about Speaker Johnson. Is he on shaky ground after this week's fiasco? I want to bring in Republican Congressman Cory Mills. He voted against his party's latest funding bill. Congressman, good to see you.
Good to see you. Frankly,
you have been consistent in voting against all CRs. You have a fundamental issue with them, period.
I do. And one of the biggest reasons, I'm a military combat veteran. I really care about the strength of our military. I care about the robustness of our defense capabilities. And when you do a CR, it actually prevents new programs of record from coming on board. So as our adversaries, we know that China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea has a geopolitical alignment. They're an axis of evil. While they advance their programs for hypersonic ballistic missiles, as an example, we can't start new programs of record for research and development. So it actually hinders us, not to mention adds billions of dollars per day in additional spending.
Well, you think about the fundamental reasons why you are against it versus the process by which they're trying to do this right now. All eyes are on Speaker Johnson, and they're very critical of him. Do you share in the criticism? Is he vulnerable now for not being able to be reelected, get that gavel again?
Well, I'll tell you, I think that every speaker with this political climate is always on shaky ground.
Why?
Well, because the thing that we haven't changed is how we're actually running Congress. We're trying, this is my whole point of why I ran, was to try and change the fundamentals of how D.C. operates. And I think that we need to limit federal government overreach and growth. We need to limit this two-tiered system, which is basically abandoning the American people. These CRs are essentially driving inflation, which is hurting and killing our American middle class. But yet Congress thinks they deserve to have more money in their pocket while the American taxpayers don't. Congress thinks that they should exempt themselves from registration of Obamacare, but not the American people. Why is it that you're trying to be either one of two things? Are you a politician or are you a representative?
Well, is Speaker Johnson somebody you think should remain in that position, given your concerns?
I think that's still to be determined. Look, I think that he is a very faith-based, constitutionally principled man. I think that he faces a lot of uphill challenges at the current moment because he is still one of a three-legged stool. So you still have Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer, who are the Democrat leads of the Senate. You have
Mr. McConnell's the Democrat lead, you say?
Absolutely. If he's going to vote like one, I'm going to act like one. So when I sit here and don't see him stand up to the fight the way that everyone else should, I have an issue with that. I've been a registered Republican my entire life. However, I consider myself to be a constitutional conservative. I believe in the 7 Articles, 27 Amendments to our Constitution. I believe that I would like to abolish and repeal the 17th Amendment so we return more power to the states and individual rights. We should limit federal government power, and we should get back to what our founders and framers were intending. I think it's a very simple thing to understand.
Well, let me ask you, some people are looking at, obviously, the power of the purse right now that Congress has. They're blaming Biden for not being more active, although it would frankly be disruptive of the idea of the separation of powers. But you also have somebody like Elon Musk, who's not an elected representative at all, let alone a member of Congress, and he seems to be wielding a great deal of influence. President-elect Trump, not yet the president again, having a lot of influence still. If Trump were to say he doesn't support Speaker Johnson, would that impact your decision? And should Elon Musk have the influence he does?
Well, I think that when we created DOGE on the understanding of trying to get government efficiencies, which I think is desperately necessary, I think that's almost the same thing as if you would appoint an ambassador. So if you're appointing an ambassador of a country, does that mean that he shouldn't wield some type of influence? Well, of course he should. And that's the same thing with Vivek Ramaswamy and with Elon Musk. When it comes to President Trump's support of things, look, he supported that last CR, which also eliminated a debt ceiling. I obviously voted no on that.
Right.
So I do what I think is fundamentally principled. I want to support the president's agenda, but I also look at this and say, why couldn't we have done simple things? The 118th Congress fought for two things: germaneness of every bill, so we don't cram things that are not germane to one another, and single-point bills of appropriation. If we would have brought together an agricultural bill individually, a bill for funding natural disasters individually, and a CR that funds the bare minimum of government for 30 days until January 20th, I could look at that and potentially support it. But when we're doing these cram-bus, omnibus, minibus, CR, short bus, whatever we want to call them at this point, I have an issue with that because it's physically irresponsible. And so it's not just about who endorses something, it's also about what is best for the nation. We have to understand it's people over party, and we have to understand that we are elected representatives to represent our constituency as well.
So you weren't concerned at all when there was the threats of being primary that Trump was saying, if anyone goes against me?
No, I'm never concerned about being primaried. I leave that at the will of the people.
Should Johnson be concerned if Trump speaks out? Because he's very influential among the Republican Party about being able to keep people in his line?
Well, I was actually part of the Trump administration in his first term, and I've supported the president. I'll always continue to support the president's agenda. I want it to succeed, but we can make things successful in a very physically responsible way. I think that Johnson should be concerned. He's losing a lot of the confidence of his own conference when he would rather try and make a deal across the aisle than actually rally his own conference together to
But you
determine
need
theirs.
across the aisle.
We absolutely do, but you also don't abandon a lot of those who are just trying to ask for simple things. We could have taken the bill that was tonight and said, look, just put it into 3 single-point bills, and you'd have had more Republicans on side. That was the biggest thing we asked for. Let us not be hypocrites and say that we want to fight for single-point appropriation bills and then abandon that. Let's not fight for germaneness and then abandon that, because in my opinion, that makes us hypocrites.
I want to read for you what the Wall Street Journal had to say. Their editorial board writing this tonight, Congressman. Mike Johnson is probably the best the GOP can get as a speaker. He listens and understands how Congress works. Some Republicans are saying Mr. Musk should be speaker, and if they want a short-lived majority, go for it. What's your reaction?
Well, I think that's actually something that would be true. I think that
Musk could be the speaker?
That Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy should focus on government efficiencies and looking at how we can actually tailor things to be more effective. And Speaker Johnson is certainly better qualified for this. He understands legislation. Again, I'm a fan of Speaker Johnson as a friend. I worked with him on the Armed Services Committee. I know how constitutionally principled and how, faith-based he really is. But I will tell you that it doesn't, all of those things aside, doesn't make you a great leader. You have to be willing to go out there and do things that are unpopular. You have to not only say, I want to get the most majority of people to like me. It's about doing what is right for the American people. I personally think if you leave Congress with more money than you came with and a better reputation than you came with, you probably didn't fight for anything. You didn't help the American people.
Well, we'll see how many people can live up to that standard. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us, Cory Mills. Democrats are trying to spin tonight's vote as a complete win for them. What does it say about how they'll push back against Trump once he does take office in January? We'll talk about that next.